Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IS Current Affair Analysis for 10th June 2020, and these are the articles we'll be dealing today. So this article is taken from the Hindu and it is titled Being Vocal on the Right Local. So recently our Prime Minister has advocated that we have to buy local level goods or Swadeshi goods to reduce the dependence on imports. But for that to happen, we have to orient our strategies to produce locally in a cost effective manner so that the consumer does not feel that he is overpaying for an inferior product. If we take a close look at our economic history, in 1991, our former Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao has unleashed the India's growth story. And again in 2000s, it is Atal Bihari Vajpayee who gave a new lease to this economy by pushing the infrastructure and privatizing many industries. Even telecom sector is a prime example where because of the national telecommunication policy, many private players have come into the picture and led to the growth of the industry. So now our Prime Minister's agenda is being vocal on local. So if we see all these reforms, mainly the bottom line was to improve the percentage of GDP from manufacturing sector. So if you see the present scenario, not enough jobs are being created through service sector, even though it contributes a significant amount for our economy. It is the manufacturing sector that actually shapes up the future of our Indian economy. So there is a critical weakness in our economy because of this reason. All the big talk of consumption and service-led growth of the previous decade ended in creating a low value addition potential. If you look at the present scenario, we have a case where the manufacturing base is very small and there are many unskilled workers. We have many engineers, but they don't even have the basic knowledge to handle any manufacturing job. That is the basic problem here in our economy, that of capacity building. So ever since the government was formed in 2014, ever since our Prime Minister Modi has assumed power in 2014, he wanted to correct this by tapping new value added opportunities through his various campaigns like Digital India. And he followed up with some other programs like Stand Up India, Startup India and Make in India. So this Make in India's new avatar is this push for local products. So the emphasis of this article is in forming the conception of what this local constitutes. That will shape up our future of economy according to this writer. So the author believes that we could transform ourselves into a society which is environmentally conscious, where we can have affordable healthcare, where public schools are functioning to its full capacity, and where there are choices over where we can work and how we can live, and there is support for who cannot work, that is social security, where cities could breathe again and families could move to opportunity rather than being forced out of their homes by drought and desperation. In short, if we have to summarize, if we get this definition or perception of local right, we will be moving towards sustainable living. Now, if you want to quantify what this sustainable living means, please pause the video and have a look at Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets below these 17 goals. So if we can encapsulate in our daily lives these 169 targets and mechanisms to achieve these targets, we are moving towards sustainable living. And that is where we have to get our definition right when we talk about local. We have to ensure that all the aspects of these sustainable development goals are available locally. So in the wake of this COVID-19 crisis, we have seen a reverse migration. Now, what is the impact of this reverse migration? So, the impact is this: when the economy reopens after the lockdown, there will be labor shortage in urban centers. That is the first problem. And this labor shortage will be felt very acutely in the construction activity and construction industry, which is of course the nation's largest job creator, and this sector is already facing severe labor shortage. The productivity of the workforce involved in agriculture is lower than the urban workforce. So millions of workers going back to the rural economy could bring national productivity levels down. And therefore, whenever we are talking about local agenda, we have to focus on empowering this local population to an extent where their productivity comes up. Otherwise, the problem is states that experience high rates of out-migration to urban areas are also the ones that will have to bear the brunt of these unemployment. Say for example, we have states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, which have huge influx of migrants coming from elsewhere in a hope that state governments will create the jobs. Now, this will become exceedingly difficult for them to absorb this returning migrants, largely because of the fear of escalation and the spread of COVID-19, and also it would initiate a health crisis in the already overburdened economy. On the other hand, we will see a situation where rich states of Western and South India who host these migrant workers are in a hurry to send them back home to avoid unrest. So in these times of crisis, how to get this formula of the conception of local economy right? That is the point that this author is trying to emphasize on. Now, if we take a global scenario into our consideration, today across the globe we are witnessing the retreat of multilateralism, and therefore whenever we are talking about local, we are witnessing a trend in scholarly circles as well, where local just means hyper nationalism, where there is protectionism exhibited by countries like United States, which wants to protect their domestic trade through tariffs, quotas, etc. Now, that is not the kind of local markets that we have to focus on, because if you take the various products where India achieved global competitiveness, whether it is about software development or whether it is pharma industry or whether we are talking about engineering products, all this happened because of international collaboration and not because of inward looking protectionism. So the underlying lesson that we have to learn from this experience is that collaborative efforts always work. Now, when we are talking about rural economy, this collaborative efforts principle should be applied to local governments as well. Now, how do we do that? Local governments should be empowered to handle this. Now, when we are talking about local governments majorly face three set of problems. The first problem is lack of financial resources. Secondly, we need to ensure that there are certain functions that are clearly laid down by state governments. Even till today, local governments do not have a clear concrete framework as to which set of subjects can be under their jurisdiction. Third one is capacity building. Even if we give the powers to handle certain subjects, the capacities at local levels are very low. We have to work for that as well. So this is the lesson that we have to learn and empower the local governments in such a way that capacity building, financial resources are decentralized and objectives are clearly laid down, where knowledge is respected, and after the produce is produced, there are enough avenues for marketing these in global level markets. That should be the kind of support that national governments and subnational, that is state governments, must give these local bodies to ensure that their expertise is respected in global level economy. Now again, we have to remember another point, that not every village should produce every kind of product. So there is this idea of developing clusters which are good in a particular kind of a product. Say for example, we have coastal Andhra Pradesh, which has a potential to develop food processing industry, especially when it comes to fisheries. Similarly, if we have another set of central Indian villages which are very good at producing artifacts or any kind of handmade artistic products, those should have markets, and only then we can uh, encourage these kind of industries. So it should be a collaborative effect as seen in the case of success in software, pharma and engineering products. This requires a lot of hard work, and the central government alone cannot dictate or can it expect any results without decentralized governance. That is the gist of this article. The second article for the day is taken from the Hindu and it is titled Flattening the Climate Curve. So if you've seen the response of global level leaders, they have come together to coordinate and deal with this COVID-19 pandemic. So the author of this article believes that the leaders of the nations need to act in a similar way when it comes to climate crisis, because the climate change is a bigger problem than COVID-19. Therefore, it requires collaborative efforts from all the stakeholders across the globe. In this particular article, the author is bringing attention to two particular aspects of climate change. The first one is concentration of carbon dioxide. So, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas that is naturally present in our atmosphere. So, greenhouse gases are very much required for Earth to maintain a homeostasis or equilibrium, wherein in the night time when there is no sunlight, greenhouse gases play the role of moderating the temperature without actually making Earth into a gigantic ice ball. Therefore, carbon dioxide naturally in the amount that it is present in atmosphere is not harmful. However, because of the anthropogenic activities or man-made activities, we are continuously increasing the concentration levels of carbon dioxide ever since the industrial age or industrial revolution. That is roughly around 1750 to 1800. Ever since, the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere has reached record levels. As a consequence, what happened was the global average temperature also increased. It is not just because of carbon dioxide, but also it is a cumulative consequence of various greenhouse gas emissions, but again due to anthropogenic activities or man-made activities. So if we go further into the details of how carbon dioxide emissions have stabilized in our atmosphere billions of years ago and thousands of years ago, let us have a look. So roughly around 11,500 years ago, the carbon dioxide levels in our atmosphere reached around 270 ppm. So this concentration levels was just about enough to support agriculture. Therefore, agriculture began in our societies, and as a result, it led to settled societies as we see today. Previously, we were nomadic hunter gatherers, but because of the atmosphere that is conducive for agriculture, our societies became more and more settled. So from 11,500 years ago till as recent as 1750, the atmospheric carbon dioxide levels were just around 270 to 280 ppm. But just in the last 350 years, we have increased carbon dioxide emissions to 407 ppm. This is in 2018. So we can see that anthropogenic activities are putting the Earth's resources under stress, and it is not giving Earth enough time to adjust to the new normal. So as a result, what happened was global average temperature reached record high. So if the Earth continues to heat up in the same way in a business as usual scenario, our Earth's temperature on an average will increase by 4 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. That is a problematic issue because firstly, it will lead to increase in sea levels, mean sea level. As a result, many low-lying islands will submerge and there will be severe impact on oceans, rainfall patterns, extreme climatic conditions will happen, and this will eventually destroy human life across the world. If you take the Kerala floods in 2018, or if you take the case of Chennai floods in 2015, or the cloud burst that we have witnessed in 2013 in Uttarakhand, we are witnessing a consequence of the anthropogenic activities. So unless and until we take care of these climatic events, or if we don't change our behavior from this business as usual approach, there is nothing that mankind can do before the fury of nature. We have seen that examples in 2013, we have seen that example again in the case of Chennai, we have seen that example in the case of 2018 Kerala floods, and also we have various other examples like Cyclone Fani, which destroyed the eastern coast of Odisha. And recently we have seen how Amphan has impacted the economic health of states which are already under the burden of COVID-19. So all these are various examples to show how it is going to be problematic. So therefore the author of this article suggests that what we have to do is, in a more moderate scenario, as a result of various countries largely trying to fulfill their commitments under the Paris summit, we will still be reaching only below 2 degrees Celsius, which is not enough. We have to aim that 1.5 degrees Celsius, and for this to happen, decentralized decision making, where this new mode of sustainable living is mainstream even at grassroots levels. This can happen only when there is international cooperation followed by national level legislations and subnational and local governments following it to the queue. So we need participation from local governments, but the policies should be global level. So we have to think global and act local. That is the funda of sustainable living for the future to come. If we don't follow this, more and more number of extreme weather events will happen, and it is signaling the end of mankind if we don't actually handle this problem. That is the gist of this article. That's it for the day. Thank you.